I wanted to turn now to Nathalie and to go across the pond from the US down to Brussels and talk a little bit about Europe, where we are these days. At the end of 2017, everybody was talking we are in for a great year in Europe because we have started Brexit negotiations. The EU has shown a hard, clenched fist to the British. The institutions are re-energized, and President Macron is in his pole position, so to say, in European policy. And all we are waiting for actually are the German elections and Mrs. Merkel to get the renewal of her mandate. Now we are in quite a different spot these days. Macron is perhaps in his starting blocks, but Mrs. Merkel doesn't have a government. Do you think there will be really a push for European reform in Europe? This is my first question. And the second, could you draw the chief lines that you see these days between member states?
I mean, I would say that, well, the answer to the first question is yes. I think it's useful to sort of step back and think where we've come from, and we've come through basically the darkest moment in the EU's history. I mean, if we take the year starting from June 2016 to May 2017, a year that was coming after the Eurozone crisis, the so-called migration crisis, in which we had a sequence of elections following the UK referendum on Brexit, in which we literally thought this may be it. The project that we've been building over the last 60 years may simply come to an end. Now, I say this because I think it's useful to recognize the fact that we are no longer in that place. There have been major policy developments, think about defense. There has been, I think, quite an important polity reawakening. If we think about the Pulse of Europe demonstrations, the kind of mobilization that happened during the 60th anniversary of the Rome treaties. There has been then the political possibility, indeed presented by the election of Emmanuel Macron, and now here we are waiting. So there's been a delay in this, if you like, renewed push for reform, but I think we're still at that place. There will be, inshallah, a German government very soon, and that indeed provides that political opportunity. Now, if the question is, will that political opportunity lead to revolutionary change in the EU? Well, then my answer to that question would be a no. Because there has never been a revolutionary one-step change in the history of European integration. It's always a sequence of steps that often come alongside a sequence of crises that tend to push the European project forward. So yes, I do think there will be reform. I think that reform, and here I come to the answer to the second question, may indeed see, and I realize that amongst this audience, it's a delicate topic to touch, but we'll probably see increasing differentiation within the European Union for the simple fact that if we want to move forward on integration, and given that we do have a union which does have a variety of voices and ideas, in my personal view, the only way to make that integration move forward is to allow for increasing differentiation and a sort of live and let live approach within the union itself.
We can live with the word differentiation. You formulated it really delicately, but I think what the audience really appreciates is if we go to the concrete. What do you imply by differentiation? Poland being sidelined or Central Europe being marginalized?
No, let me put it this way. I mean, I think it's really a story of rights and responsibilities, and the two need to go hand in hand. And the point is, no one is forcing anyone into anything, but the minute in which one chooses, i.e. a particular state, chooses to be into a particular form of deeper integration, well, that comes, those rights come with responsibilities. So I don't see differentiation working if it is indeed a club that determines who's in and who's out. But what I do think is that if one does indeed choose to be within a particular sort of area of deeper integration, whether it's the Eurozone, whether it's migration, whether it's defense, rights come with responsibilities. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
You're a good observer of Europe, and you also have access to the corridors of Brussels. Could you give us a picture how you see Poland's perception? I would perhaps limit it to the last quarter, not to the past 2 years, but has sentiment towards Poland shifted one way or another after government change in Poland? Is there renewed hope for more cooperation or more agility on the side of the Polish government?
I mean, I would say that, let me put it this way, I have never come across anyone who genuinely believed that European integration could move forward without Poland. So I think Poland really is viewed as a core, a central country, a central member state in the European project. And this, I think, is the long view. And I think that actually never changed. So indeed, precisely because that is the conviction, there is obviously a great deal of anxiety if that member state, which is viewed as a core member state, is seen as going off on a tangent when it comes to issues that, of course, we're all familiar with. So I want to put it in these terms because I really think there's a silver lining to it. If Poland was not viewed as so critical to the European integration project, there would not be the degree of worry and anxiety that there has been in the EU concerning Poland's trajectory. So yes, indeed, I think that concern is there, but of course there is also sort of hope that things can be brought back in line with a Poland which actively contributes to the European integration project.
As you saw, I have been asking our participants to pin some probabilities, even in terms of numbers, on certain scenarios. What probability would you give to a scenario in which Poland, the issue of sanctions, or the sanctions procedure, Article 7, is now in the Council of the European Union, which is the body of ministers of European affairs of member states? How probable do you think it is that until the end of the year there will be a vote on Poland in the Council?
Definitely less than 50%.
This year, until the end of the 2018. So I have to ask a follow-up question, why?
Because I think it has less to do with Poland and more to do with other member states. Now, let's rewind back to 1994, Austria. Why is it that in the case of Austria, there was a far greater likelihood that things were moving in this direction? Because other member states, and of course there were far fewer back then, had the conviction that this is not something that could happen to them. So the reason why I think this Polish issue is so crucial is for reasons that go well beyond Poland. So in many respects, my low probability is actually, in my view, not a piece of good news. Because I think the resistance coming from other member states is their concern, could this happen to us? Because, of course, what is happening here and what is happening elsewhere in other member states is a bit of a trend. And therefore, it's not a surprise that the only ones that have been trying to genuinely move forward this dossier are sitting in Brussels in the institutions as guardians of the treaties. So I think there's a real sort of divide here between what the Commission does and is entitled to do, and has to do indeed, according to the treaties, and the political climate amongst other member states that behind the scenes or behind closed doors may not be as willing to push forward on this issue because they think, what could happen to us tomorrow?